This is the IFES podcast. I'm Laura Osio. Following its 2007 general elections, Kenya experienced widespread violence that left approximately 1,100 people dead and more than 600,000 displaced from their homes. Since then, the International Criminal Court and now Kenyan courts have been investigating the violence. Lisa Kammerud, IFES research officer specializing in election violence monitoring, talks to us about the Kenya case and what it means for electoral violence more broadly. It was recently announced that Kenya is making improvements to its judicial system and will now be able to investigate and prosecute crimes committed following the 2007 election. Can you tell us about this?
This is a good move by the Kenyan authorities. It sends a strong signal about their intention to actually prosecute perpetrators of the crimes. I think there was some concern following the post-election violence, and this lengthy amount of time relatively between the time that the violence happened and any action has been taken. So this is a good move not only to say we are committed to prosecutions, but also we're committed to make improvements in our judicial system to make the prosecutions more effective. And for victims of the violence, I think this will be reassuring.
Now, the International Criminal Court, the ICC, has been investigating the violence for some time now. Why do they have jurisdiction, and how will the investigations conducted by the Kenyan judicial system differ from the ones conducted by the ICC?
The International Criminal Court has jurisdiction over, in general, over war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide. In the case of the post-election violence in Kenya, it was the ethnic nature of the violence, the possibility that state officials were involved, and the allegations that the violence had been orchestrated beforehand. Those were the signals that the prosecutor at the International Criminal Court read that made him think that this was potentially would fit under crimes against humanity. And so that triggered the ICC jurisdiction. Kenya is a party to the statute that incorporated the ICC internationally, so they're under its jurisdiction if those kinds of things happen in the country. The difference is that the ICC investigation will likely only focus on a few individuals. They've spoken about 2 cases and 4 to 6 individuals, so really just the ringleaders of the violence, whereas the prosecutions locally could focus on perpetrators at any level, and therefore the judicial system is domestic and could handle a lot more cases than that.
What does this mean for the victims of election violence?
Well, for the victims, it can mean a couple of things. I mean, one is just from a justice and healing perspective to have crimes against them acknowledged, not only at a really high level, which the ICC is doing, but also at a local level. So, for example, if you're a woman in a refugee camp and you're with your children and you know that your neighbor killed your husband and took your house, you might not have been satisfied with seeing top ringleaders prosecuted, but now that this domestic action is more likely to take place, that woman would be more likely to see justice for the person that actually hurt her and her family. So this is really kind of unprecedented in terms of reaction to election violence. In most countries, cycles of violence around elections happens. People are concerned about it, but you don't usually see a lot of, 1, international attention, or 2, domestic prosecution of perpetrators. So we really don't know yet, how far-reaching the effects of these efforts will be.
What effect will this legal action have on deterring election violence in Kenya and the region as a whole in the future?
Ideally, you would be working on a number of levels to deter election violence. So I think the addition of these legal measures, again, being somewhat unprecedented, could have great impact, but it's somewhat uncertain. We can talk about what we think they'll mean, but we're really sort of in new territory. The things that have worked traditionally and should be continued to reduce election violence are things from a variety of other actors on the ground, election officials, political party leaders, civil society organizations, all of these groups, and the public in general, really, all of these groups have a responsibility to continue to do their part to draw attention to election violence and also to advocate against it. It comes in different forms in different countries, and so the exact roles of different stakeholders will be different, but it's the combination of efforts from many angles that will deter it the most in the long run.